Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to start building out our separate sign-in form. But the first thing is first, we might need to shuffle around a couple things, which is also a great habit that you will build as you're building out features. The key thing that we set up earlier was we set up this sign-in page. But what we'll notice is that what we're going to host inside of this sign-in component is going to be both the sign-up form, but also the sign-in form. So calling this sign-in isn't necessarily accurate anymore. And you'll notice this as you develop your features, that sometimes you'll need to rename folders, rename files, rethink about how you've architected a lot of these different structures that you've already set up in order to make it more accurate to reflect what you need. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this sign-in over to authentication, which makes more sense, which reflects what it actually is, which is that we're particularly authenticating our users. Now that we've updated this folder structure, we also need to correctly fix the places where we were importing this sign-in before. So where we had it before was inside of our app.js. We were importing in sign-in from sign-in.sign-in component. So let's rename this to what it actually will be, which is our authentication. And here I am also going to update our app.js. I'm going to update the component to our new authentication component, and I'm also going to fix the deep linking over to the correct route. And also for path, I want to change this to auth, because sign-in is no longer accurately reflecting what the path represents. So we've updated our route. We also need to update our navigation. So inside of our navigation component, we need to switch this from sign-in to auth so it takes us to the correct place. So let's make sure that everything's working now. Let's go back to our application. We click our sign-in. It takes us to auth. It renders the correct component. So here everything works. The next thing we need to do now is we need to start setting up the appropriate component structure. So here, what we're going to do is we are going to go up to our components. And what I want to do is I actually know that the sign-up form is pretty similar to what we're going to need for our sign-in form. So I'm going to copy the whole folder and just paste it in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this folder as well as the files. I'm going to call this sign-in form. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename these different files to sign-in form, and similarly do the same for the styling. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the appropriate places. So here, I want to make sure that I'm importing in the correct sign-in form styles. And also, for the form name, I'm going to rename this to sign-in form. And now let's save this. So let's think about the differences between our sign-in form and our sign-up form. We know we don't need their display name, and we also don't need their confirm password. We just need the email and password. So similarly, we know that for these form fields, we also will not be destructuring off display name or confirm password anymore. As for the handle submit, because we're not doing any password confirmation, we don't need that code. And here, this whole try block is probably not going to be correct. We'll have to figure out something brand new for this code, as well as the error. So we're essentially just removing everything we know that we won't need. But the handle change is going to stay the same, because similarly, these input fields are going to need to reflect changes, which we're going to capture inside of our use state. So everything here can stay. Inside of our actual form, though, we know that we need to change this text. So we can say something like already have an account. And then we'll just say sign in with your email and password. And inside of the form itself, we don't need this form input for display name. We need the email, we need the password, but we no longer need confirm password. And finally, for the button type, we just need sign in. So here, let's save this. And what we want to do is we just want to bring this into our actual authentication component, just so that we can make sure that everything is working. as in everything is plugged in properly. So I'm going to update this to sign in form. And then what we want to do is we want to place the sign in form onto our page. So here, we've just replaced that button that was our login to Google. And here, now we see inside we have our sign in page. So everything is working. Let's add now the actual functionality to sign in as well as our Google sign in button. So we already have our actual method. I just want to copy this over from our authentication into our sign-in form. So inside of the sign-in form, I'm just going to create this method. And what I want to call it is sign in with Google. And here we notice that we need this import. So this import is going to be coming from Firebase utils. So let's copy that over. And earlier we had taken this user doc reference to console log it, but we don't need that anymore. So we can just get rid of it. We just need to know that we're creating a user doc auth. So we're going to copy this sign in with Google method. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create another button. And this button is going to be our Google sign in. But remember, we only need one submit button. With Google sign in, we don't actually need the submit button. We just need it to trigger our sign in with Google method. And here, if we save this, we go back, we see that we have our Google sign in. And when we click it, it does indeed trigger our Google sign in. So awesome. Everything here is working so far. So let's go back. What we also want to do is we want to set this button type over to being a Google button. So here we can just pass it the string Google, and we can save this. And we see that now we have our Google button. But now we need to style this a little bit. So I'm going to make a new div, and inside of this div is going to be our to button. And I'm going to apply a little bit of styling to this div inside. And what I also want to do is I want to give it a class name. So I'm going to call this buttons container. And inside of our sign-in form styles, I'm just going to modify this buttons container so that it has display flex. And then I'm also going to justify the content so that it is space between. And now if I save this, there we go. It looks much closer to what we had before and what we were looking for. Now, as for the actual functionality of submitting this email and password, what I want to do is inside of our sign-in component, I want to create this method. So remember, what we had before was that we need to try something where we are able to take email and password and sign them in. So what we got to do is go back to our Firebase utils. And inside of Firebase auth, if there's a create user with email and password, turns out there's actually a sign in user with email and password. Sign in user, sign in with email and password. There it is. Sign in with email and password. So similarly, we want to create another interface layer through a helper function. And we'll just say that this is sign in auth user with email and password. So similarly, just like we did with our create auth user, if we don't get an email or password, we don't want to run our function. But when we do, instead of running create user with email and password, we want to run sign in with email and password. Similarly, as you expect, you pass the auth, you pass the email, you pass the password. So let's save this, copy this method, go back to our sign-in form, paste it inside, and now inside of our try, we can just const get back our response, and then we'll just call await on this method, passing in email and password. And then let's console log the response. So if we save this, we come back, we open up our console, and here, let's say I knew that the email I had was mike@gmail.com. Password is 12341234. If I hit sign in, I see that I get my user object, and inside with my user, I get my access token. Here, everything works as expected. the UID, which is this one, ZMJDAF, inside of our Cloud Firestore is the correct one, ZMJDAF. There we go. We have authenticated our user using email and password, just like that. So simple. Much of this is pretty much just a recreation of our sign up component, except with a couple nuances and tweaks. And also we just needed to integrate our Google sign-in button. But everything here is just putting together all those little bits that we already learned. So in the next video, what we want to do is we want to style this page so that it looks a little bit more polished and also clean up any last remaining bits and pieces that we have before we're ready to move on from our authentication. So with that, I'll see you in the next video.